We are always given limits by people. In school, we have rules to follow that are usually broken. In society, you have morals to follow. Right, so we all have limits. At least, only up to a certain extent. Thomas Edison was the inventor of the light bulb. He once had a lab that cost over $200,000, which is over $5.6 million in today's money. This lab was racked with the latest equipment and tools to help him find the ideal filament for his light bulb. One day, the whole building burned down. Everything he was striving for was lost. And one of the scientists asked Edison, "What do we do now?" Edison replied, "We start rebuilding tomorrow." This is a limit that was broken not by any law or rule that was put in place by people, but rather one that was put in place by your own mind. Any modern individual would give up after losing almost $6 million, as long as they aren't already worth billions. Epictetus once said, "Man is troubled, not by events, but the meaning he gives those events." Now ideally, you wouldn't have a lab sitting around to burn to test your resilience. So let's relate it to something that you come across every so often that hurts a lot. You stubbing your toe. Now, you might be wondering, what does a toe have to do with your mental limits? A lot, actually. When we stub our toes, we feel pain. You stub it and you curse, and this signifies the lack of control over emotions, the one thing that's inside you that you should have most control over. Finding a way to control these emotions will not just help you in these big events, but will also help you make rational decisions towards emotional suffering. This control of emotions has enormous benefits, such as being able to control your reaction to a bad grade, or being able to think clearly when your building's set on fire. And even though you aren't likely to come across these exact situations, it will still help you no matter what. You will notice that you regain power over most of your life by just getting your emotions under control. Zeno of Citium was your average Greek man. He came from a line of entrepreneurs, and he was quite wealthy. He had worked in the trade business where he traded dyes and multiple other things. And one day, he found himself in the middle of the Mediterranean Sea. He was in the middle of the sea with a ship full of purple dye, one of the biggest novelties at the time. He was trying to follow in his family's path of entrepreneurship and make his business the most profitable one. On the way there, he found his ship sunken. What caused the ship to sink is still unknown to this day, but it caused Zeno to go across one of the biggest financial, emotional, and mental disturbances of his life. This seemed like the end for him. A loss that in the modern day would lead to excessive drinking, thoughts of not even continuing entrepreneurship, and even going to the verge of suicide. Instead, it led to creating one of the biggest philosophical movements in all of history, one that would influence the likes of Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and countless others. It started the wave of Stoicism. When we watch movies and see these stories of the main character losing everything and getting back with even more, it seems quite absurd. But oddly enough, it's only when you lose everything that you're free to do anything. It's only when you've lost your attachment to outside things that you're able to get control and freedom of your emotions. Marcus Aurelius is a prime example of this. He was known as one of the big five leaders of the Roman Empire, mainly because of all the access he had to novelties, but never indulging into them. He could drink all the wine he wanted. He could go to as many parties as he wanted, but yet he chose to stick to his beliefs and not let his wants get in the way. How many times have we found ourselves in a position where we aren't happy with the outcome? The returning of a bad grade, the outcome of a relationship, the failure of a competition. It is comforting to dwell on the emotions of sadness and self-pity while listening to Juice WRLD on repeat. Every time we do something bad, we let it define us for a really long time. And this is mentally debilitating. Imagine if you're trying to do your work and your mind keeps on telling yourself, you can't do this because you failed the last test, or this is too much work for you to handle. It's like living with a bad roommate. You'd want to move out and not live with them, but this roommate is stuck with you and all the doors are locked. There aren't even any doors, there aren't any windows. This roommate is your mind. Your capability to expand past your biological makeup is the wild development of your persona and wisdom. This biological makeup is your emotions, and they determine way too much of what you do in a day. Think about it. You wake up feeling down. You follow your morning routine feeling groggy. You go to school feeling burnt out. If you switched all of these emotions around, how would you react to it? Instead of feeling down waking up, you'd feel positive. Instead of feeling groggy with your morning routine, you feel energized. Instead of feeling burnt out going to school, well, you'd still probably feel burnt out. Now, you kind of just expect me to tell you to use positive thinking, which does work, but it's not ideal. It's hard to think positive at times when everything isn't going the way you want it to. Instead of coping with negative emotions towards events, why don't you just use it as a lever for success? Just think, if I react this way to this event, I will be like the others. Getting your identity involved in something will make you more prone to reinforcing that identity. Those who tell themselves they're failures are generally failures. But it's not the fact that they are failures that made them failures, but it's the fact that they think they're failures that they are failures. Now, that doesn't make much sense, but an easier way of thinking of this is physiology affects psychology. That which you think is that which you will physically reflect, and that's what you physically reflect is that which you think. If you are a success, you know you're a success because you have physical proof for that. If you believe you are a success, you will start working towards that goal of becoming a success, because you want to fulfill your mind's desire. There is a variable difference, however, between having a huge ego and actually putting in the work. Having a huge ego is telling others that you're putting in work when you really aren't doing anything at all. So are your emotions in check? The next time you get hurt, the next time anything bad happens to you, check your response. How do you respond to that email saying you're fired? How do you respond to that assignment dropping 30% of your grade? Will it be something you control, or will it be something others control? Because true success is found not out there, but in here.